All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Dom, where we help guide you in your tech journey, one story at a time. Hey there, Tech Explorers. I'm your host, Dominic Gomes. Today, we're going to be diving in to everything in the tech universe, from mentorship to scaling your career. But before we kick off, a quick request for all of our viewers: please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support lets us know that you like what we're saying and that you want more of this content. So let's jump into the conversation today with a very fantastic guest and close friend of mine, Chris Kraft. Chris and we met back in 2020 when we were both solution engineers at DocuSign on the same team. As in this podcast, we talk about mentorship a lot. I've always looked at Chris as a mentor to me, especially when I came to DocuSign and I was new. But we've remained close friends over the years. And actually, I finally got to meet him in person in Chicago last year. So that was a lot of fun. But Chris, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Yeah, your wedding, man. Like, it was good times.
Yeah, so hello, everybody. Yeah, it was funny because it was the wedding where we finally met. So I appreciate you coming for that. So kind of give you an idea of myself. So again, Chris Kraft. I was born in Chicago, grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I've been in tech for about 23 years now, so I wouldn't say I know it all, but I know some. Right now, currently, I am a sales director over at Microsoft, and in that 20-year lifespan, I've touched a lot of different companies, seen a lot of different things, which enabled me to now be going to the area of artificial intelligence and platform selling.
Yeah, that's quite a journey, 23 years. And I did remember when you told me that you did work at NASA too as well. So
yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, but
oh yeah, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, I was at NASA.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that because it's not like how it used to be. But yeah, that's quite a little stint.
Yeah, well, I think even in general, right? Like, looking at your background, I know you started from an engineering background, correct? And then moved over into tech. So why don't we get a little bit more into how did that transition go from doing engineering to, I'm going to go into the technology industry?
Yeah. So to kind of give it a quick breakdown, really, Dom, is really my uncle taught me back in the day, always, if you want money, you got to read about money and you got to follow the money. So as I started learning, going down my engineering path in college, I noticed that, people who are outside playing Frisbee seemed to have a more relaxed life, and it looked like they were having fun. As I moved towards, graduating, I had essentially started looking at different jobs to get into sales. So before I was at NASA, but eventually I got to sales actually being at NASA. So what essentially that I went to is called a sales associate program. Cisco Sales Associate Program is the name of the program that I got in. Now there's similar things like Microsoft Aspire, Salesforce Trailblazer. These are good ways that you can segment to get yourself into tech sales without having a tech sales background or studies behind you. And so that allowed me to get my first job at Cisco Systems, where I was able to touch a lot of different other technologies, as well as understand different roles when it comes to sales engineer. Just to let you know, sales engineer can be called system engineer. It can be called technical specialist. So with that being said, you want to make sure when you're looking for these roles, make sure you've done your research to understand what is the actual nomenclature for a sales engineer within that organization. And so once I got my MBA, got into the program, then the next thing I ended up doing was essentially got transferred and came to Chicago. And then from here, I constantly was just working, and then understood, like, there's another area of sales that you need to get into, which is personally the bag focus is a sales specialist. So I moved from sales engineer to sales specialist, and just kind of quickly just ran through, did a lot of leadership, went to an individual contributor, back to leadership, individual contributor, back to leadership, and now I'm back in leadership again. So the one thing I want to highlight on that is it took me a while to get to where I'm at. It took, honestly, like I said, 23 years, but to get to where I'm at in Microsoft, it actually took and a half years. So I can get a little bit more into that a little later. My purpose of saying all that, everybody, is that do the work, because that's the only way you're going to get into these organizations. You have to do the diligence, take the lumps, and eventually you only got to be successful once. And once you get that one chance, you just get in the door and you run with it.
Well, I think that you bring up a good point, right? Because you mentioned that to us too, where you've gone to leadership, but then you've also stepped back before, but then you went back to it too as well.
Yeah.
So, any advice for folks that, I mean, because I've seen it happen right now. There's people that we're managers right now that are getting laid off, unfortunately, in the tech industry, and maybe they're trying to get back into it, but all they're finding is individual contributor type jobs. But I mean, your story of kind of going all places, any advice for folks that have potentially been in that situation where they have to go back into an IC role?
Yeah, so I think the one thing I kind of messed up earlier when I said, management, I would like to say a leader versus manager.
Mhm.
Two different things. So typically when I see people go from a leader back to an IDC, either they were not, interested in the job and they just wanted us to try it, or
Sure.
they didn't like the manager who managed them. Or now most people who stay in those roles like it because one, they're really empathetic and want to help people be successful, and they want to help their manager be successful, which allows them to really kind of get that feeling and success moving forward. So I say that to when you're looking for a company that you want to work for, make sure you're interviewing the hiring manager, because it'll let you know if they're a leader or a manager. For example, a manager like will ping you off hours. A leader wouldn't even touch that. Like I try not to have any meetings on a Friday. When people try to do that, and I have to ask really what is this for, and if not, I cut it off and say this is not worth it.
Yeah, I it's a good point, and I think a lot of people don't understand the concept of how management works in the sense that I would say there's two main types of managers. You'll hear the term a manage up manager or a manage down manager.
Mhm.
Manage up means a lot of times is that they're going up to their manager to try to funnel things up to as well, and a lot of times the person below sometimes is more of like, all right, how do we get them to kind of get to that point? But then there's also the concept of a managed down manager, someone that's more
Mhm.
focused on the people that are reporting to them.
Yeah.
And I think you see both in your career sometimes, where there's a lot of optics that a manager who wants their career to look really good too as well, that you kind of have to make them shine. But then you have
Mhm.
managers that really want to make you shine.
Yeah. So kind of going back to you just said managers, right? Leaders know how to do both. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the thing that you want to kind of you'll have to do. You have to do more things when you become a leader, because that is how leadership is. You can't just be one sided. So
Mhm.
that's one of the things a lot of people just don't catch on from a leadership perspective. One thing I would also say, if like when you think about just my way of just in life going up the corporate ladder, or just in life in general, I really learned that social currency matters. If you're not familiar with social currency, it's pretty much your network. So an example of this would be I say I don't know Michael Jordan, right? But I want to get a pair of Jordans. I won't get them, right? But if I knew Michael Jordan, he could just send me a pair. So what I'm trying to say, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. Your branding is very important. So definitely get to know other people within the organization. Also get to know other people outside of your organization. That is going to how you create social currency across all these different areas. So therefore, there's any challenges, like there's been a lot of layoffs and rifts. You have different sounding boards and people that can help you get another opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think you see a lot of that nowadays. And I think the one thing that always stood out about you is that you always had a brand. Like in the sense when I look at LinkedIn, I could see that you're posting things. You're talking about AI, which I know is very crucial to what you're selling too as well. But even aside from that, you made a brand, at least at DocuSign, is you had passions in like say leadership, diversity, inclusion, but also your art too as well. Lots of so you had a lot of things that people knew who you were because you were very passionate and very vocal about the things that you were passionate about.
Yeah, be unapologetically yourself, man. At this point in my career, I'm not really worried about what other people think, because one, I know my value, I know my worth, I do good in my job. Nobody can sit and say anything negatively unless they have their own personal opinion or they have their own personal bias, which honestly, I don't care what other people think. My job is to do my job, do it well, get paid enough so I can do the things that I'm passionate about, like traveling, buying art, things of that nature. I think most people get kind of confused because they think that, they got to be on pins and needles. But the one thing I can say for as a person that is a hiring manager, I hired you to be you. I didn't hire you to be
Yeah.
something else.
Well, I guess that's the thing is as your role as a hiring manager, because now you've seen it where you've been in, just an individual contributor. Now you're a manager. What are you typically looking for? And, not just from like technical stuff, but what are the qualities that you look for when you're trying to hire someone for your team?
Yeah, so I would say it's kind of so I'm gonna kind of give you a scenario, one scenario, and then my scenario. So,
Okay.
so some people are biased. Everybody's biased, right? So when you think about people who are looking for people, they look for their tenure within a company. So somebody that has been there, can't rock the boat, not trying to do anything. They want those type of people because they're going to be sitting in seat. For myself, I am a person that says you should be moving at least every 3 to 4 years within your organization or outside of your organization. Primarily because, again, that social currency component that I mentioned, but also when you leave, you can get an extra 30% bump opposed to, let's say they give you RSUs. And so that it actually doesn't make sense, right? The RSUs, you got to wait a whole year where you can get a 30% increase in like a month. It makes more sense to me in my personal perspective. And again, like I said, my goal is to get the bag. So with that being said, in the way I look at people, I go into it understanding they're going to leave in 3 to 4 years because that's my goal, to get them to get out at 3 to 4 years so they can go to another degree and move up in the ladder or move laterally or whatever they want to do. Another thing that I think about when I'm looking for people, I'm not looking for, well, I am looking for some technology, right? But do you have a basic concept of technology, right? That can be taught.
Mm-hmm.
Some things that can't be taught is like swagger, sales, know how to own a room. Those things are honestly more critical because when you think about sales, sales is an emotional scenario. And if you don't feel that person doesn't feel emotionally with you like they have their back, you have their back, they won't purchase. They'll just figure out a way to put you logically in a certain area within the front part of their brain. So, and this has been documented. It's called the neuroscience of selling. If you haven't tried that out, check it on LinkedIn. It's really good.
Yeah. We always used to say this in when I was doing sales training is people like to buy from people they like, right? So you have to kind of know what they care about, but then also be able to build that rapport and it's really building a relationship.
Yeah, and care about is not just work, right? What do you care about outside of work? I think that's where you have more relatability, right? So, for example, when I was at DocuSign, right, we would come in and do those art shows, and we would talk about artwork, how you can leverage it for financial reasons. I'm not trying to get into that because I'm not a licensed person, but I would have those conversations with people, and it showed them that not only that I am outside, I do something that's kind of like what they consider taboo, but also I'm talking about how it can bring the value back to them to be successful. So that's kind of the things that kind of go into the brand perspective, helps with the social currency, allows people to understand how to strategize their own personal business. And I say that because at the end of the day, you work for yourself. I work for Chris Craft Inc., right? I subcontract out my time to the highest bidder, correct? Now, I might love my job. So, obviously the highest bidder can always bid back up again. But my goal is to make sure that I'm doing what's good enough for my family so we can eat, opposed to what everybody else thinks. Because I'm not trying to sound mean, but loyalty to these companies has lost, and this new generation does not agree with staying forever because they like to experience their life, which I look back and I can't blame them. You only got one, right?
Yeah, it's true. You have to look at a lot of things, and I always tell the same thing that you were mentioning to folks is, every 2 to 3 to 4 years, it's up or out. You're either learning new skills, you're moving up in a company, or moving into a different type of role in the company to gain skills you want. But if you just stay in the same type of role necessarily, at least in the tech industry, for 10 to 12 years,
career suicide.
It doesn't look good. And you kind of get pigeonholed into a certain type of role when, do you want management experience? If you're in sales, do you want to move up market? Do you want to sell into enterprise, or maybe you're an SMB and you want to move to mid market? But if you're just kind of saying stagnant,
Yeah.
when you're looking for other roles, it gets tough because people are going to ask that question. It's like, well, why didn't you try to do anything more?
Yeah, like what else did you do, right? So I have no problem with people being stagnant, unless if they're learning other things in that role, right? So, for example, I had a scenario where one person tried to not say try, but I talked to them and gave them kind of an informal conversation around bringing them into the organization, and they've been at the company for like 8 years. And my question to them was, "What did you do?" I was what did you do? Were you a PowerPoint engineer? Were you, part of some groups? Like what else? Because at the end of the day, I'm looking at to find somebody that actually has a little bit of hunger and grit, that actually wants more things, opposed to leaning back and be complacent. Because if you're complacent, it's career suicide, right? It's gotta add value. And if you don't add value, specifically business value, you'll get let go in a spreadsheet or just let go because of performance.
Yeah, and I think the value in, and if you think about it, people moving around and trying new things, that's why Silicon Valley exists. Is it all started off way back in the day when, was it one of the semiconductor companies? There were those, I guess, five guys, the traitorous. Don't quote me here, but there was a group of folks that were working for a big semiconductor, and then they went on to create Intel, and they created on all these other companies.
Mhm,
So people learn skills at their existing places, essentially,
mhm.
and then they take that to either new companies, and
Yeah,
that's sort of how the whole vicious virtue. It's not vicious; it's a virtuous cycle,
yeah,
because that's how we push the industry forward.
yeah.
Is
You have
knowledge share.
Yeah, you have to do that, right? So it's kind of like if you're gonna, it's like growth. I try to tell people like if you haven't did anything in COVID to better your life, then I gotta question you because you had 2 years to do something, make bread, right? You get a hobby with flowers, learn how to ride a bike. If you say, well, nothing changed, and I'm like, well, it's not trying no knock on them. It's as I know from me and with my personal aspiration, it's not going to be good enough for me to be around you because I'm a firm believer that positive energy matters and you want to be around people that have positive energy. So for example, if you want to be a millionaire, you need to be around millionaires, right? If you want to learn the technology, you need to be around those people that learn technology. If you want to get into tech, be around people that want to get in tech because that type of energy is going to speak it into existence, and that's how it's going to happen. And then people like us will notice you if you're there, if you're hungry, you know, send a LinkedIn
I,
request. That's how
well,
it
I
works.
mean, a good example is one of the first people I interviewed on the show, Shaquille Matherin. That was him. He was just hungry, and he reached out. He genuinely had an interest in what we do,
Yeah,
and how to move into this type of role.
yeah,
And I find people that do that, like have that genuine drive and passion, like that's priceless. Like
yeah.
you can't just will grit. You have to have it.
You have to have it, man. It's funny. So, like, for the people that are watching, I'm at, Microsoft as a sales director, but let me make sure you understand. It took me 2.5 years to get into this position, and it required a lot of work. So, essentially, what I was doing is trying to build my network and relationships outside of where I currently worked with people that were at Microsoft, figuring out ways how I can help them, any way that I can kind of give them some updated information. Could I get them into a different room outside of technology? Then the next thing that I did was I started pinging people that I actually knew there, right? So now I'm building I'm pinging the relationships I already have, but I've already built a brand name for myself because I'd already start talking to people within the organization. The next part was I got my friend he came up to me, he said he wanted me over there, and I gave him my resume. He passed it on to the right person, and then the right person passed it on down, right? So, and to do that, like I had certain people I would talk to like at least once a month, once a quarter, just again stay at face. And then eventually, when the time came for a slot opening, I went in, I done my due diligence, and I crushed it. I walked into a 30-day, 30, 60, 90. I had an appendix, told them about me, and more importantly, the value that I can bring to the organization. And that took me 2.5 years to get to that point. So it does not happen overnight. Even with people that are already in tech, it's hard to move up in tech. So just want to kind of give you there. You have to put in the work. It really requires some grit. Because trust me, when you get in the role, that grit that you created over that time span, you're going to need it for the job to perform. Really,
Getting in is just the beginning. It's not the end.
100%.
Definitely. Well, with what you're mentioning there of when you got into the role, and then I know you've had some promotions actually internally too as well. Like when you got in and you were working in Microsoft, I mean, it's pretty evident that, like you're mentioning, that grit never ended.
Right.
What to even let the audience know, like, what really drives you to continue to want to push forward and continue to move up?
Yeah, for me, it kind of go. My father was a teacher, so he always kind of motivated me to be better and also help other people be better, right? It's like lift as you climb, and that's part of my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Incorporated, Roots of the Qs. But no, so that's kind of what I like to do is help people become the best version of themselves, right? If they want to be. The key thing is you got to want it. And that's kind of how that keeps me driven, because the people that I see are driven because they want to go somewhere else. They want to be better. And so that keeps me like really excited about it, especially in sales, because you want somebody that is hungry, right? I remember one time I asked somebody, why would they want to be in sales? They were like, well, I love, after they said something. It wasn't even relevant, but he was like, I want money. And I said, okay, I'm hiring you because I know what you want. So be direct and tell them what you want, right? Obviously, do it in a professional manner, but you want to make sure you're putting all those questions ahead of time so they know what type of person they're going to get. Also, you know what type of person they are.
So well, it's a valid thing you said, right? Like understanding what drives you and incentives are always important, because if it is. Money's a valid answer sometimes. Like it totally is. We all need it to live. Exactly. And you got to provide for your family.
And the funny thing, I interviewed for one company and I decided to ask the question to the hiring manager. I said, so what do you do outside of work? And the first thing said, like, what do you mean? Like, well, what do you do outside of work for fun? I don't understand. He said, I don't understand why that's relevant. And I was like, we can end the interview now. I know I will not work for you. So I did it graciously, but you get those type of robotic people, and I don't work with robotic people, right? And so my thing was, if that's all you do and you don't have a personality, or you're not willing to talk about your personality, I definitely don't want to work with you, because it's not that I don't think you're a bad person. I just know our styles will not match.
I get that too. And it's funny because the first person I think of who just has that amazing, hey, he's passionate at work, but then also outside, was Brandon, man. Like, the guy was the most interesting guy. I always say he's like that Dos Equis commercial guy. He's the most interesting man in the world. He's got his passions. And every time I feel like you get on a call, we're not just talking about the job. It's like, we're going to talk about what's going on with him and what he's passionate about. He'll be talking about cigars he loves or this type of music. And I think it's important to have passions outside of work, exactly what you mentioned, and bring that in so people know you're not just all about this.
Because it makes you relatable, right? Like, I can't relate to a lake house, but I can relate to going outside and looking at the mountains. I have nothing wrong with that, but it's like you have an idea of this person is not an employee, but they're actually a person. And at the end of the day, that's really kind of what leadership is. If you treat people good and like people, they'll want to stay and work for you, right? Because people don't leave jobs, they leave bad managers. And again, I said manager, not a leader. It's two different things that I strive to lead. And my actual focus is like legacy leadership. How many people I've helped get a job, how many people I helped get promoted, how many people will speak on my behalf when I'm not even around. So my brand is good. So that's the thing that, kind of motivates me, but that's what I definitely like to do and help people with that. That's what I live by personally.
Do unto others.
Do unto others. You want others doing, just be a good person. It's that simple.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just be a good person. Smile. Nobody wants to be around people that are negative, man. I remember my mom used to tell me, she said, like, don't complain. If you don't complain to nobody, because nobody's going to care. right? They got their own problems in the world. So my thought process is like, you don't come to me with problems, you come to me with solutions. Now you got your time to vent like every other human, but it's no way in the world I don't want to hear you vent for like 30 minutes. If I don't hear any solutions, I'm going to question your logic. I'm going to question your emotion, and then I'm going to get myself out of that conversation some way, shape, or how. It can be gracious and not gracious, to be honest with you.
Well, you bring up a good point too, as well, because I always looked at you as you and I were, I would say, people that we could trust. And if we had to vent to each other, we would vent to each other. But it was never to the point where, like, we didn't come out of that thinking like, oh, this is lost or hopeless. It came out of it as like, well, let's try something different, or, you laugh it off a little bit, because sometimes that's it. That's how it is. Sometimes people can take things that are happening a bit too seriously. And then when you start talking with other folks, you realize, oh, you know what? Maybe this isn't as big a deal as I thought. So that's always a thing. Like, I always looked at you as, you and me were like, we were partners in that sense of where we could call each other up if we were having a bad day and just talk it through.
Yeah, you gotta have your BS meter on when you come to companies, right? I try to be myself. Actually, I am myself all the time, and people kind of think I'm a little abrasive. That's on them, no problem. You're gonna get me unfiltered, right? But also, I'm doing very well for a reason, because I'm honest and straightforward. But to your point, the politics that comes in when you get into an organization, you definitely want to make sure you have your tight knit group of people that you can have a sounding board to kind of talk about what's going on, identify some solutions. Because remember at the last, the one jobs we were at, right? It was the scenario where the person was kind of complaining. Some sales rep was complaining about me, and essentially, I came back and said, because leadership came down, and I simply was saying, okay, at the end of the day, I'm hitting my numbers. So what can you say? Right. And then I had a whole list of everything that person did. So I had documentation, and I was setting expectations, right? So that is one thing that you want to do, is like always keep a paper trail. If you have to, always keep an I love me file, because people will challenge you, and you need to make sure you have that stuff documented. Because if it's an HR case, trust me, HR is not to protect you. They're there to protect the company. So make sure you're documenting everything you have for when you're in these organizations. And I'll say that just a CYA scenario, because people can point the finger with no context, and then your brand is ruined. So you need to have resources, and you have a track record of what you have been doing that you're doing well. So just want to kind of give people that little component. And then also I would say, when you get into an organization, we talked about this, identify who has social currency and who does not have social currency. Because a lot of people who are managers are part of what we call the Peter principle. They fail upward. So essentially the person is not good. They don't want to get rid of them. So they'll just make them a manager, which is bad, because just because you did well in a certain thing doesn't mean you should be a leader in a certain thing, right? So that's kind of the challenge that you see, because I'll be honest, it is a white male dominated industry, right? And they have a lot of bro codes in it. It is challenging for minorities.
No, totally. I think understanding politics in any organization is important, because you have to know who's who, and you have to know what they care about, and who says what. Because you mentioned that whole concept of, what do people think of you once you leave the room and you're not there, is always something you should be thinking of from a brand perspective.
Yeah. Remember when I was able to have a relationship with the CRO of the company, and leadership said, how did you do that? And I was like, well, I'm not going to tell you, but I have a relationship. What's the problem? Because that's when people start getting kind of scared, right? It's what they call the middle management freeze. Like, essentially, that means that the leader can do a top-down approach. It's up to middle management and first-line management to execute it. But what you'll see, there's a mess up between the middle management and the first-line management, and that's where the issue is. That's why usually a rollout does not happen the way it's supposed to, because it's not implemented it's not implemented correctly, because you don't have the right people at the leadership position.
Well, and I think it also shines a light that it's important to have skip level conversations and
Yes.
relationships always.
Yep. Because my story is, who can tell your story? You or somebody else, right? Who tells your story better, you or your manager? It's really
I mean,
kind of,
you're going to always because
yeah,
generally how humans work is everything's one big game of telephone, right? Like you can tell a story and then that story changes, and then at the end, you're maybe getting 10% of what you originally said.
exactly. That's why you see a lot of these companies do a lot more surveys lately because they're trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
Yeah, and I feel like that's been a thing over the past couple of years where they used to not really do a bunch of surveys until I
Yeah,
would say the last 3 to 4 years, but it makes sense. They want to
yeah,
get it from they want to get straight from the
yeah.
worker bees.
Yeah, I think it's funny, man, because sometimes when they do these surveys, it's like it's supposed to change something, and then it doesn't work. And then they hire the same consulting firm 3 years later to implement the same strategy, but a different verbiage of the strategy, right? They'll hire like a McKinsey, BCG, and it doesn't work because the middle management isn't taking it. Because you do have managers that are passive aggressive, right? And you do have some people, let's just call it lazy. I mean, one thing I've seen due to COVID, there's a lot of, I'll just be honest, lazy people now. They don't want to get in the street. They don't want to go to see the customer. I mean, for me, I'm actually on the road right now for 6 weeks to meet customers, that have that relationship, to build that brand, and also get buy-in from my team. Right? I don't want them to think that Chris is just behind a computer telling me what to do. I'm going to be there out there with them, and again, that's what a leader does. It essentially get into the fight with his team or her team. So
You could go in and close the deal by yourself if you had to. That's the type of mentality. Well, and I'll just give the example. Like I've always loved managers. At least, like I'll explain to the audience in the sales engineering world. If you're working with a manager and you were sick and you needed someone to be able to just jump in and do a demo, or be able to do the demo, like having a manager that can just come in and drop everything and be like, I got this for you. I feel like those are the best. I love working with people like that because they're doing the job with you. It's not a you're doing it on an equal playing field versus like, well, I'm your manager.
yeah, I agree with that, or at least be able to talk high level and give them more industry relevance. Because sometimes the technology, it works, right? But the core thing to understand is like, what is their business initiative, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like this is what the industry's doing. Their teams over here doing this, customers over here doing that. How are you creating your strategy to help your business either make money or save money? That's my
Yeah.
pitch.
Yeah. You have to, it's not just managing resources and telling them what to do. It's getting in and providing value to the customers too, as well, at least for the customer facing jobs for sure.
Yeah, I try to say like three, like my simple pitch is that, hey, I'm the one of the people on the team. I just so happen to be the leader. My job here is to provide them with industry level experience, as well as giving information about what not to do, so you don't have any issues. And to summarize it, my job is to make your job easier and help you make money. That's really my only job, and that's it.
I mean,
That is
when they win, we all win.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But you have to have that type of swagger that can just say that, right? Some people are like, well, I don't know. No, just be yourself. You know your job. You can summarize it real quick. If you don't know how to do it, take it and try to tell your parents and tell your child or tell one of your friends. If they can't understand it, we need to go change your pitch again. Or how do you explain yourself? Because you want to do, you want to make it as simple as possible, right? Like kids, keep it simple, stupid. You don't need all these extra things. Because I'll keep it real with you. A title is just a title. You can get fired at any given moment. so you want to make sure that when you do meet these people, you've left a brand that will allow them to know who you are, even if you're not in an organization again. So
Well, you bring up a good point just around titling in general, because and we've seen it our entire lives where you'll have some companies that super senior principal, blank role, but
uh-huh.
then you'll have just some companies where same type of level, same responsibilities will just be like account executive, right? Or enterprise account executive with not all the superlatives beforehand. I
Yeah.
think people need to look at roles for what they are, not the titles themselves, because it doesn't mean you're going to make less money. Doesn't mean you're going to make more money. So you could be a director at one organization that's really like almost an individual contributor role at another organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember the other company where I was a leader at, I had like 2 levels of leadership below me. And then essentially I moved over to this role, and now it doesn't matter who's below me. I have a number I have to hit. So just because you manage all these people doesn't mean you're not hitting it. You still have to hit a number, right? And so my thing is that people kind of think the way to get up in an organization is kind of climb the corporate food chain. It's really about getting the bag, right? Whoever is the best performer, they're going to get it. People who are best liked, they're going to get it. When people who become and create champions, and champions are people that are going to use their social currency in a room that you're not there, and they're going to talk about you. That's the thing. That's what things that you need, because at the end of the day, promotion is a game, but your career is your life. So you have to make sure you play it strategically.
Yeah, and learn the things you want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like learn the things that are going to get you to that. And it could be like a good example is just for me. Like I started off in post sales, and pretty much by the time we started chatting and I worked with you at DocuSign, that was like my first full blown product sales engineering role.
Yeah.
You know, before that I was doing it from the ProServe side, but I took a step back to move forward, and now I feel like I'm in a much better spot because I took a risk to learn something different.
Yeah, I think the one thing that people don't realize, man, and I know for me, I don't know how about you, Don, but it's like, you ever heard the term like sometimes you can't see the forest from the tree?
Yeah,
and essentially that's what stepping back does. You step back, now you see the bigger picture. Like, oh, that person, this person, oh, they're doing this. Okay, they're doing this. So I need to go here instead of there. That allows you to get some perspective, So, they always say, take one step back to take 2 steps forward. And it actually really works. Nobody wants to take a step back, but trust me, taking a step back allows you to breathe, figure out what you want to do, and look around and strategically figure out your path once you jump back in. So
yeah, because maybe you started off in sales and you want to be a product marketer, or you want to be a product manager, or you want to do solution engineering. If you have to, take a different title change, or even potentially less money, which is something that I did too when I made the transition, in the longer term, as long as you're pursuing something that you're more passionate about, but get you the monetary compensation that you want, then that's gold. Like, I love what I do. I know you love what you do, and that's the thing. Sure, there's stressful parts of our jobs, but like, doesn't it just make you excited? Like, it's an exciting job, man.
It is. I think one thing people don't realize is the long game, right? Long-term
Exactly.
investment. Everybody wants this quick dopamine shot because of TikTok, Instagram, or whatever. But to get the true return on investment that in anything that you do, you have to wait the long game. That's how it's going to happen. I think that's one of the challenges with some people. I remember I had one person come up to me, like, I should be making $100,000 a year, fresh out of college. And I was like, you don't even have the social currency, Rolodex, relationships to even have $100,000. Like, what makes you think you can do that? And then I compared their resume to my resume. Then it got quiet real quick. I said, this is me mentoring somebody. And this is the difference with your generation and my generation. You really don't have anything to show for, right? We've already been tried and true. And I always like to say I'm not a baby boomer. I'm not I'm a Gen. What am I, brother?
Gen X, right?
I'm a Gen X. We're like the toughest generation, period, right? We got the relationships with our parents, and we still cool with the kids that are coming up because we were right there. I remember once there was the telephone, then there was the internet. Legit, just like, it was like night and day when it happened. So
yeah. No, but you bring up a good point. Is that I think that with the rise of social media and things like that, I think a lot of folks do have wrong expectations that it's just like, hey, you could just graduate college, you just get into tech, boom, 100K, 100K at Google or Amazon or Microsoft, and it's just easy. Yeah, for some people, like I guess for software engineers that are like super like talented and have the skills they're looking for, that is possible, but it's not by all means, it's not the norm.
It's 100% not the norm. It's
Not the
like,
norm.
yeah, I mean, I looked at myself and I kind of looked back like, dang, I see why I didn't get out there. I wasn't mature enough, nor I knew how to handle the new responsibilities that were coming. Also, my learning method needed to change. I don't, or, I learned I had to surround myself with like-minded people. So I had to like even remove people out of my life and remove people out of my job requirements. I couldn't have people around me that weren't trying to do the things that I need to do to be successful.
It's very true. Very true. I think the same thing. People, for people that are in the industry and they look on the Blind app and they see, TC 700K and stuff like that too, as well. Like, some people are like, wow, you start getting the FOMO of like, what am I doing?
but Blind is just so toxic, man. You look at Blind, it's like, you can't be feeling this way. It's like, just leave the company at this point, And sometimes I think people are on there just trolling the troll. Like I saw one, they were talking about price points. I'm like, no, there's no way they're making that at all. Because being a director, you know how much people make. So it's like, this is inaccurate. But at the end of the day, man, I really say the best thing is always word of mouth when it comes to stuff like that. And also say, going to conferences is another way you got to build your network. Also, I did mention that also. But
definitely,
it's kind
of build your network.
Yeah, man, it's just crazy how people are nowadays, especially when you get higher up. It gets even crazier. Like for me, I know I'm not going to a certain level because I personally don't want to do a speaking convention on a Saturday in Vegas. I want to be at the pool on a Saturday in Vegas. Like I just can't. At some point in time, you realize your personal life it's way too much valuable than money. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's ranked very close to breathing because you need it to survive. But at the end of the day, you gotta enjoy your life, man. You only have one. And once I understood that, I was like, okay, this doesn't matter too much anymore. I'm gonna do my job and I'm gonna shut off.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Work smarter, not harder, right?
Work smarter, not harder. Well, hey, I think we're about time here, but I wanted to end it off, Chris. Is there any other parting thoughts or advice you want to give to our viewers, that are, let's just say people that are one for people in the industry and one for aspiring to be in the industry? Any parting words or thoughts?
Yeah, people that are, aspiring to get into the industry, just keep the grind up, keep, creating social leverage, keep reaching out to people because you only really got to be successful once. Because once you're in this industry, you're not getting out because we're looking for people who have honestly tech experience. But sometimes we don't want somebody that has tech experience. We want somebody with a diverse way of thinking and a diverse way of, running a business. So that's one that I would say for, people that are trying to get into the organization, take advantage of it. Don't use things like, the pre-sales collective. Those are some other things you can do. When you're inside of a company, my first thing is, find who your tribe is, people that you can talk to. Then you want to start understanding the social currency climate. Who can do what and who can help you and who cannot. Also, you want to understand you need a champion. Sorry, you don't need a mentor. You need an advocate, right? The advocate and the champion. That's the person that's going to use their social currency to help you move up in the corporate ladder or give you the heads up when something's coming so you can be prepared for, the aftershock of a decision that you don't even know that's being rolled down the chain. I think those are the two things that are the most, and you'll get the best, best bang for your buck when you're inside of an organization.
Well, thank you, Chris. And again, thanks for everyone listening to this. Please, again, like, share, and share this with your network and subscribe. We do these every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. And, comment below and let us know what your favorite tip was from Chris. And with that, we will end this here. But thank you again, Chris.
Thank you, Dom. I really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.